In this video, I'm going to share the exact training, nutrition, and habits that took me from this to this, without restrictive dieting, complicated macro tracking, or a single minute of cardio. The end shape is something that's achievable for any guy who doesn't want their fitness to take over their life. So if you want to look and feel better without spending your life in the gym or eating rabbit food all the time, this is how you do it. Starting off with nutrition, because as the old saying goes, abs are made in the kitchen. It's absolutely true. Getting lean is just about being consistently in a negative energy balance, also known as a calorie deficit. And the simple fact of the matter is, we simply don't burn as many calories from exercise compared to how easy it is to consume them. So if you want to get lean effectively and efficiently without spending too much time on it, you've got to control your calorie intake. Fat loss is pretty much a numbers game. And the most important numbers for our purposes are calorie intake and protein intake. What were my numbers? Well, I actually have no idea. I didn't track them. My calories range from anywhere from 1500 to 2200 during the week, and from 2200 to 2500 at the weekend, but probably some days much higher than this as well. The only thing that was consistent was my protein intake, which stayed around the 200 grams a day mark. The only way I was able to personally do this is because I've tracked many times in the past. I've got my tracking wings. I know exactly how much food to eat, what kind of meals I enjoy that allow me to hit these targets, and what kind of habits I need to engage in. Like I said, I've earned my tracking wings. I've passed the test. I've done what's required. But if you haven't done that, if you haven't tracked your diet for 6 to 12 months consistently, and that doesn't mean just picking up MyFitnessPal, downloading it once and just not using it. I mean, doing it every day for months on end. If you're willing to do that, you're earning your tracking wings. It means that this isn't something you have to do for the rest of your life. You internalize that information and makes it so much easier moving forward. Of course, you don't have to track to lose body fat. People do it without that, but it's a bit like trying to run a business but not knowing your revenue or your expenses. Tracking solves that. It gives you that bird's eye view of exactly what's going on with your diet, and it drives you towards the actual important metrics that are going to lead to progress. In terms of foods I ate, I pretty much follow a fairly basic kind of meal plan that's not really a meal plan during the week. The reason being, I work long hours. I just want to have food that's ready, easy to consume, that doesn't take up too much time, and it allows for more enjoyable foods at the weekend. So here's my basic diet. For breakfast, I would have usually around 60 grams of oats with skimmed milk and 2 scoops of whey protein powder, and often 1 to 2 pieces of fruit. For lunch, I'd have 200 to 300 grams of mixed frozen veggies, just your basic ones that you microwave, and 200 to 250 grams of chicken breast, cooked in a Maggi bag. If you don't know Maggi bags, get to know them. With both of these meals, I would just vary the seasoning, vary the toppings, so although they're basic, there was some variation in there. Dinner was a massive variation. There could be curries, there could be burgers, there could be fish, there could be stews, there could be noodles, there could be rice dishes. But the one thing these meals had in common, they had a decent protein source and a decent amount of veggies as well. I recommend following this kind of structure if you're a normal guy who wants to actually eat a meal with your family or your partner and don't want to be the weirdo in the corner eating your chicken, rice and broccoli or whatever weird low carb meal you have. Have breakfast and lunch as something fairly low in calorie but high in protein and really filling. In that way, you're saving a bunch of calories for the evening meal, and you can just be a normal person and eat what your family eat while still dropping body fat. The only snacking I did was on fruit, protein yogurts, and some low calorie junk like Pom Bears and Curly Whirlies. Weekends, there was a lot more variation. To be honest, I didn't say no to any social events. I was at people's houses, I was having food that they cooked for me. We even had a week away in Italy, eating all the pizza, pasta and seafood that you can imagine. And again, I didn't really try and censor myself. I just enjoyed it. A week or a weekend doesn't ruin a diet. So what allowed progress to happen despite much more interesting higher calorie weekends, boozing, that kind of thing? Well, simple. I just balanced the books. If I knew a high calorie evening was going to happen that weekend, I just made sure it was a really low calorie day. That's it. That doesn't mean that I always hit my targets, not that I really had any, or I always stayed in a calorie deficit. As long as on average over the course of time, you are getting things right, it's fine to have a week away in Italy or a holiday away or a bad weekend. Don't let that hold you back. Again, let's use a money analogy. Imagine if you've got a big holiday coming up, it's going to be quite expensive. You're going to be spending lots of money there. Well, what do you do to allow for that? Probably you save and scrimp a bit before, and maybe afterwards you don't spend as much. And it's exactly the same with your food. If you've got a high calorie weekend, just be a little bit lighter during the week and the week after. So that's pretty much it for diet. No fat burners, no timing of post-workout carbs, no specific meal frequencies, No specific meal plans, eat whatever you want, just hit the numbers and be consistent. The only other thing that contributed to fat loss was trying to keep my step count as high as possible. And luckily I have a large white fluffy beast who pretty much whines at me and barks at me if I don't take him out twice a day, rain or shine. So he helps me get my step count. And I sit at a desk for 8 to 10 hours a day, but I was still able to get around 10,000 steps a day on average. But if you don't have a large fluffy white creature making you go for walks, just try and get your step count high. Walk to the shops rather than drive. And I know that's hard when the weather's a bit shit, but you'd be amazed at how little changes can lead to big results. So let's get on to training. I do no cardio or any kind of HIIT or any kind of circuits or anything like that. All my training is geared towards trying to have as much muscle as possible, trying to build muscle as the body fat comes off. Yes, you can build muscle in a deficit, and especially if you believe you can, it's so much more likely to happen. At the very least, you're going to preserve what you've got. I hit the gym 5 days a week with a legs, push, pull, legs, upper split. Now, I train 5 days a week because I can, because I've got the time and I actually enjoy going there, but it's absolutely not essential to spend that much time in the gym. Honestly, I doubt my results would have been much different if I only trained 3 or 4 days a week. The sessions would just have to be slightly longer. So don't for a second think that, well, I have to train 5 days a week if I want results like him. Many of my clients train just 2 times a week and they get fantastic results. The only real benefit to training more often is that you're going to grow a bit more muscle. And the more you train, the lower the return you're going to get. So even if you do 2 sessions a week, that is plenty. 3 is a bit better, 4 is a bit better, 5 is a bit better, 6 is marginal, and 7 definitely not worth it. In terms of exercise selection, I just opt for exercises that have got a good stimulus to fatigue ratio. Now that is a video in itself, but essentially it means the amount of muscle gain stimulus that it gives you is good without too much fatigue. And when you're leaning out, it becomes extra important that you pick these kind of exercises. Your energy starts to suffer and training just gets harder. So I'd much rather blow my quads up, sat on a leg press, than having to do the same thing with a barbell on my back and do squats instead. Training should still feel hard, but if you can, avoid the systemic fatigue that you're going to get from big movements like squats and deadlifts while you're trying to lean out. I'm not saying don't do these exercises, but there's probably more efficient ones you can pick if you don't have that much time and if you're actually leaning out rather than building muscle. In terms of structure of the training program, I would train in 6 to 8 week phases and gradually increase the volume of my training until I'm at a point where I can't progress anymore. More volume could mean another couple of reps, another kilo on the bar, or even another set when necessary. The simple thing you need to do is progressively give your body more stimulus in order to send it the signal saying, hey, I need this muscle. Do not lose it. Maybe go and lose that fat flabby thing over there instead. Keep this muscle. Once I couldn't progress any longer, I did a deload week, which is essentially an easier week where volume and intensity comes right down, and I only was in the gym for maybe 2 days. Calories also came up to maintenance levels, but because it's not a great idea to stay in a calorie deficit if you're not giving your body those muscle gain, muscle retention signals of training. In terms of mindset and timeframes, the total time it took me was about 20 weeks of concerted effort. That was with those deloads and those breaks in between at maintenance. So not 20 weeks of pure dieting, nothing like that, but several phases put together with breaks in between. So when you realize it's a long game, it's not about trying to be perfect all the time. Quite the opposite. From a nutrition perspective, it is about expecting yourself to screw up and eat a ton of calories, because that's life. That's what happens. So if you expect it to happen, you're going to do better the rest of the time. You'll also not fall into that all or nothing mentality that keeps so many guys stuck. Some weeks you'll do great and the scale will drop like it should. Other weeks you'll do great and the scale won't drop at all. Other weeks you won't do that well and the scales will actually tell you you've just undone weeks of effort, when the reality is you've probably just hit a water weight fluctuation that will flatten out in a few days. No matter what week it is, just try and remain stoic. Don't get too excited when the scale drops. Don't get too upset if it doesn't. Whatever you see, just shrug it off. Focus on the stuff that's actually going to get you where you want. Hitting your nutrition numbers and getting your sessions done. Apart from that, realize there is no finish line for this stuff. Yeah, sometimes you're going to be leaner, sometimes you're going to be fluffier. But in any case, fitness should be part of your life, not just the prelude for a wedding, holiday, or big birthday. So have that long-term mentality about it. Enjoy the food. Go for the drinks if you want. Just don't try and be perfect. Focus on the basics. Follow what I've said in the video and you'll do all right. Cheers.